If you like Scream, and I'm sure you do, there are probably a couple elements that keep bringing you back. The meta-ness, the references to your favorite movie, Tatum in this scene, the romance, the chases, Tatum in this scene, the cleverly written dialogue, or maybe it's Tatum in this scene.
You're a simp.
But if you really like the tense, horrifying, isolating feeling that the opening scene with Casey Becker brought you, stop this video and watch When a Stranger Calls Back. And I guess you should probably watch When a Stranger Calls as well, but that's not what this video is about. I began this movie on a whim when I had an afternoon to kill. I really enjoyed the first, follow me on Letterboxd, but I had low expectations because Hollywood loves cash grab sequels. Now, usually I like to hone on one aspect or theme instead of going through a movie beat by beat, but I just found myself unable to stop taking notes all throughout, and I have so much to say, so the through line here is the whole movie. As a kid, I watched the When a Stranger Calls remake multiple times, and it wasn't until I was older that I even realized that it was a remake.
The two young children of a wealthy doctor.
Bye.
They told her where they would be and when they would be home. They told her everything she had to know, except what to do when a stranger calls.
Hello?
Have you checked the children?
So going into the original, I expected the whole movie would be the same setting and plot, but I was shocked to find that Jill's home alone with the kids aspect was stretched throughout the entirety of the remake, but it was only the beginning of this movie. The rest of the movie was a crime drama, which I found super cool, and when I watched the movie, I expected it to do what every sequel does, which is just do the first movie again, which you can argue that this does. What I found drew me in was that it was 25 minutes into this movie that I realized I hadn't moved a muscle. I was gripped and thought it had only been a couple of minutes because it flies by. This movie took the most famous and scariest parts of the first movie and gave us exactly what we wanted, more. Our soiree begins with a knock, of course. We are invited into a conversation that isn't intrusive or sinister per se, but even in a non-horror movie, the setup here is just off-kilter enough to where we don't feel comfortable. The hardest part, and the best part that this movie could have done, is giving us our main character and making us care about them. This is done through realizing that Julia is a smart girl, entertaining to be kind, but not stupid enough to actually open the door here.
I'll call them for you.
I can do it. I don't want to put you through any trouble.
When a character falls into a trap that's obvious, it's hard for us to want them to survive. Obviously, Casey doesn't deserve to die because she was a little bit less than honest about her relationship status, but we're frustrated with her because despite her horror knowledge, she wasn't able to get out of the situation. The engaging aspect of Julia is that she gets out of the situation despite not having all those red flag horror movie ideas that we all know.
I'm back.
Okay. My name is Stephen Dane.
The sound design here is really great as well. I had to really lean in to hear the audio, not because it was too quiet in the mixing, but because with the way that they did it, I kind of felt guilty if I just turned it up. I felt like I was supposed to be leaning in this moment. The second knock that hits at 12 minutes gave me goosebumps. The conversation feels like the trust of good intentions on the other side of the door has drained even further, and we feel even more alone than we did before. This feeling of loneliness is rendered due to the various shots we get of a clock. We know when the parents will be home, but until that moment hits exactly, she's completely and utterly alone. All throughout this opening, we sit inside the all too familiar feeling of not being comfortable when home alone, not to mention being a house that isn't our own. Then ultimately, we all make a phone call to our friend. We feel a little bit silly asking for comfort, but unfortunately, her feelings are all too real as she was actually in danger. And yet... A few years after her attack, Julia still feels like she has to look over her shoulder at all times. Her worries do come true one day when too many coincidences have come to a head. The most heartbreaking aspect of this movie for me, and presumably for a lot of viewers, was the reaction, or lack thereof, that the police force had to Julia's situation.
Someone has been in my apartment, and they have done things, little things, to let me know that he's there.
Didn't you just say that you keep the front door triple locked?
Surrounded by an admittedly small pile of evidence, they don't even entertain the idea that a young woman at a college is being stalked. This graph from higher education enrollment shows just how far women had come in the preceding 20 years as far as enrollment at colleges. Despite those numbers going up, these situations were most likely still brushed off a lot of the time at the time. They're living in relatively new and uncharted territory. This is a theme that lingers heavily throughout the entire movie. This is a new world. Houses are splitting apart. Women are becoming more and more independent, and whether or not it's easy for these geezers to understand, they're choosing not to face the reality of how hard it is for a woman in this world to feel safe. Let's not forget the 2016 People vs. Turner case, people. In this scene, she speaks so clearly, is cooperative in the questions they have, and actually took a long time before even stepping up and creating the fuss in the first place. When she has to face a group of men who have so obviously never had to experience this kind of fear before, the concern for her safety falls upon deaf ears. The exact person they don't want showing up is exactly who needed to show up, and thankfully who did show up. I want to take a moment to address what I believe is the most successful aspect of this movie. Jill's reintroduction brings life, a depth, and a serious to this made-for-TV movie so effortlessly that it makes me wonder how the fuck they fumbled this so bad in requels now. I'm looking at you, I know what you did last summer.
This isn't the first time there's been violence like this.
No, we don't need to applaud when the character of the first movie comes in. No, you don't need to pause the narrative or the flow of a scene to allow the audience to chill out. And no, you don't need to have Jennifer Love Hewitt deliver this line.
What did you do last summer?
Bringing in Jill makes sense. We have someone who can not only be empathetic, but knowledgeable about this situation and how it will be handled by law enforcement. We see a peek into her life where she works at a women's crisis center, and we see that she's at a believable natural progression from when we last saw her. She's seen kicking ass in trainings, and makes clear her stance on why women in these scenarios need to be just as willing and dangerous as their attackers are.
And you have to defend yourself by whatever means necessary. You cannot say that you don't believe in violence unless you also say you don't believe in living.
This perfectly shows how she will go about helping Julia throughout the movie, and is actually an example of believable dialogue where telling and not showing can work. According to DCADV, the first shelter was opened in 1974, and by the end of the 1970s, there were at least 250 shelters across the country. So these movements were about 20 years old at this point, but implementation takes time. This just goes to show the ever-changing world that was still happening at the time of the release of the movie. Unfortunately though, when she's asked to explain what she fears is actually happening and what is actively causing her panic phone call to Jill, Julia isn't able to answer due to the nature of the attacker. Okay, spoilers from this point on. If you didn't watch the movie, the main twist of the film is going to be spoiled throughout the rest of the video. When I did get to the end of the movie and we figure out that this guy is a master of disguise and a ventriloquist, it made me go back through the movie and click on scenes where he might have been hiding. A movie twist that makes you want to rewatch with a new perspective is a twist that's very well executed. In every encounter we get with Jill and the attacker, with the genius way they wrote around the interactions, right when I start to wonder if she's paranoid is when the movie poses the question as well.
Are you sure she hasn't created something that isn't there?
We want to believe her because she's so obviously scared and is taking all the proper precautions. And when I don't believe her, I feel guilty like I'm one of the guys in the police station. Even our GOAT detective John Clifford is questioning the validity, who by all accounts has a very similar empathetic perspective as Jill does. We're so perfectly placed between two well-argued sides. What's what and who's who. From here, just like the first movie, we transition to the investigative side of the narrative. We see some notes that make me question if this guy actually knows what he's doing here, and we see a king eloquently explain what 6 inches actually looks like.
It was open 6 inches.
Jill and Detective Clifford are now told that Julia tried to kill herself, but Jill just wants to be sure that it isn't just staged that way. This furthers the divide between Clifford and Jill and creates a frustration between them. When we visit Julia in the hospital, the scene is dark. It's perfectly lit to make us wonder if this is reality. By the end of the movie, we know it is, but for now, it's lit as if this just could be a manifestation made more real than ever before by Julia's injured state. Then Jill comes in, and even this highly alert, on edge, smart person doesn't notice him. Okay, so he can't actually be there. No way, right? Whichever direction they took this in could have been the right call narratively. Julia still has PTSD and can't move along in a world where she can't trust, Or Julia, keeping in mind and being reminded of her paranoia, has to travel through life living in fear because of the endless torment that she's being put through. Either way is scary, right? Well, when Jill leaves the room and we finally do get our answer, reality reaches out, and it's a total gut punch. Seeing her fear come to life and be so brutal and violent towards her is exactly what we needed to solidify, yes, they should have been listening to her. Yes, she needs to be scared, and yes, she needs to not only be reactive, but proactive in this terrifying situation that she's living in. The detective saga continues in the final half hour of the film, where we see the paranoia being spread, and the work that Clifford does is paying off. This scene serves some narrative purpose, but not a ton. It just kind of gives us a peek into the psyche of the killer. We spend a lot of time with the creepy ventriloquist who ends up being our antagonist. It's effectively nerve-wracking during the entire runtime we're with him, which is what I think the creators intended, so it works. During our final encounter, we get a trope turned on its head and an example of another major influence on Scream. As we all remember, Sidney says,
"Stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door."
And just like Julia, because of the in-world knowledge of the danger that she's in, Jill goes to do exactly what Sidney recommends, but for some reason, she can't. The door is locked from the outside. She's locked in and in more danger than before, despite doing the right thing and trying to get out of there. This scene is full of tension and really leans into the gimmick they set up with the villain by having the sound mixing throw his voice back and forth between the left and right speakers.
Jill, we're all alone now, Jill.
This creates a whole nother layer of immersion. Once we finally learn what the premise is, and when he steps away from the wall, I felt like a real dunce. It's so well executed, it seems so silly, but the dedication to it and the commitment to that is what really makes it spine-chilling. When Julia says that she sees nothing, and we see the entirety of her apartment, he might have been standing there, but it's just imperceptible to us. That's horrifying. Is he lingering in the background of some of these shots when she's babysitting? We can't truly know, but his presence is felt regardless. I love it. And now that Joe has left Impractical Jokers, the police should really think about hiring him.
Boom! That's the first lesson of the orientation you guys are doing today is you never know what to expect in college. Life is never what it seems.
Clearly he knows something more than they do. Yes, Scream wears its inspiration on its sleeves. I'm not taking away from the greatness that is that movie. I'm just saying it's good to go back and watch the classics that inspired it because you might just find the exact same feeling that I did. It's kind of like rewatching your favorite movie for the first time. A movie that makes you re-fall in love with the genre that you've studied and been a part of for so long is something that's truly special. And that's what this movie did for me. If you haven't watched the movie, please take the time to go and do so for your sake. It really, really is worthwhile.
Carol Kane, Charles Durning, When a Stranger Calls Back.
If you like this video, share it around, give it a like, subscribe if you want. Otherwise, thank you for watching.